Most people store lawn tools in their backyard shed. Some keep old paint, boxes, or maybe a rusty bike. My shed, it held encrypted communications gear, a federal-grade workstation, and a secure archive used by special agents during undercover operations. So when the HOA broke into it, thinking they were catching me hiding a code violation, they walked straight into a place they were never supposed to see. And when the alarms triggered, let's just say the federal government arrived before the HOA even figured out what they stepped into. This is the story of the day, my neighborhood. HOA learned you never break into the shed of a former federal operations architect. My name is Daniel Cross, and for most of my life, I worked in the Shadows building, secure tech environments for federal agents who moved in and out of the country without leaving a digital footprint. After 22 years in the job, I retired early, bought a quiet home in Maple Ridge Estates, and hoped to disappear into normal life. The neighborhood looked peaceful, trimmed lawns, friendly dog walkers, and sunlight bouncing off identical houses. It was the kind of place you'd never expect trouble, but Maple Ridge Estates had something darker beneath the surface. The HOA board, a 5-person group who acted less like community volunteers and more like a private intelligence unit of their own, except far more incompetent. I didn't bother them, and I expected the same in return, but that ended when I started building a shed. To them, it looked like an oversized wooden structure, too industrial, too unmatched with the neighborhood aesthetic, whatever that meant. They didn't know it was built entirely from reinforced composite panels, wired with low signature sensors, and anchored with a silent communication uplink disguised as a weather antenna. It wasn't meant for storing shovels, it was meant for something very different. 2 months before moving, a close friend from the bureau asked if he could use the space occasionally as a neutral, uncontaminated work node. Federal field staff needed off-grid drop points sometimes, and my property, sitting on a blind spot between 2 county surveillance towers, was perfect. I agreed. I didn't owe the HOA an explanation, nor did I plan to give one. But trouble started. The moment the shed was completed, I received my first warning letter. Unapproved construction. Must be inspected. I ignored it because under state law, outbuildings under 120 square feet didn't require HOA inspection. I had measured carefully. 3 days later, a second notice. Suspicious activity detected around shed. Suspicious. The only activity was me installing encrypted hardware. On the 4th day, I caught 2 board members standing on my property line, pretending to measure fence height while peeking into my yard. One held a clipboard. The other had a phone out, recording video like she was documenting a crime scene. I stepped outside. Need something? I asked calmly. They both jumped. Oh, we're just checking compliance, the taller one said. His name was Mark Dempsey, the HOA vice president and self-appointed enforcer. The woman beside him, Linda, squinted at my shed. What exactly are you storing in there? Daniel, I smiled politely. Personal equipment, wrong answer. It only fueled their paranoia. That night, motion sensors around my yard lit up. Twice. Footsteps, shadows, someone testing boundaries. I activated the shed's silent perimeter mode, a feature designed not to scare away intruders, but to log everything. Height, gate pattern, temperature, phone signals. At Sendanshasifin, AM. 3 figures approached the shed door. They weren't professionals. Their footsteps were heavy, their whispering loud, and their attempts to disable the lock were laughable. One used a screwdriver. Another tried to pry the door with a garden spade. Amateurs. But amateurs with illegal intent. The moment they forced the door, the failsafe activated. A silent alert went straight to my phone, and another went to a federal contact. Because once the system recognized the breach pattern, it assumed operational compromise. I walked outside. As they stumbled into the shed, flashlights shaking. Mark and Linda were 2 of them. The third was HOA President Harold Grant, A man who believed rules made him king. What the hell is all this? Mark whispered as he saw the workstation's screen's glowing. Is this government stuff? Linda muttered. Harold reached toward a console labeled clearance required. He didn't get the chance to touch it. Blue lights washed the yard like a wave. Unmarked SUVs slid to a stop outside my fence. Agents stepped out, real ones, not HOA wannabes. Their gear alone was enough to make the trespassers freeze. Daniel, the lead agent said, walking toward me. Your system flagged a breach. Yeah, I replied. I see that. The agent nodded once and signaled his team. They entered the shed, securing the equipment and the area. The HOA members were escorted outside. All pale and trembling, Harold stuttered. We're the HOA. This is unauthorized material. The agent cut him off. Sir, you broke into a federal operational environment. You're lucky. The system didn't initiate lockdown. Protocols. Linda looked at me with wide eyes. Why didn't you tell us? Because, I said quietly, you're not entitled to know. Mark swallowed hard. Are we going to jail? I didn't answer, but the agent did. Investigation is active. Step aside. The HOA members were questioned for nearly an hour. One cried. One tried to blame another. One tried to run unsuccessfully by sunrise. The SUVs were gone. The situation contained. And the HOA board had received formal notices. They were suspended pending criminal review. For the next week. The neighborhood buzzed with rumors. No one knew the full story, but they knew enough to stop asking questions. And the shed. It remained exactly where it was, untouched, unchallenged, respected. The HOA learned the hard way. Never break into a shed built for federal agents. The black SUVs didn't leave for hours. They stayed parked down the street. Engines cold, windows tinted, watching my house like predators waiting for the right moment to strike. I didn't move. I didn't panic. I'd been trained for situations 10 times worse, but my neighbor, old man Henry, shuffled across my lawn with his cane shaking. Son, the HOA's been meeting behind closed doors for 3 nights now, he whispered. They're planning something. Something big. I already knew that, because the moment the HOA broke into my shed, something activated that none of them knew existed. A silent distress ping sent directly to the Federal Tactical Liaison Division. The shed wasn't storage. It wasn't a workshop. It was a classified field node, disguised to look like a stack of old tools and lumber. And when they tore the lock off, they triggered something that even I hoped would never activate. Henry gripped my arm. Son, they're calling it a forced community compliance drill. Forced compliance. That was HOA language for, we're taking your property, whether you like it or not. I glanced toward the SUVs. Still watching, but I knew something the HOA didn't. Those SUVs weren't here for me. They were here for them. At 2:17 a.m., the streetlights flickered, then they all shut off. The neighborhood dropped into total darkness. Few seconds later, I heard them call in boots. Fast. Silent. Coordinated. Federal teams don't move like police. They don't shout. They don't broadcast warnings. They appear. Precise. Invisible. A laser dot slid across my wall. The signal. I walked outside calmly. From behind hedges, roofs, mailboxes, fences, they emerged. 24 federal agents, full tactical gear, night vision lowered. Their commander approached me with a controlled nod. Mr. Reid, he whispered, we received your shed breach alert. You have a confirmed illegal data theft attempt by the HOA board. I handed him the flash drive. Everything's on here. They copied my devices, entered my property, logged community members without consent. And I paused. They accessed a federal network. When they stepped into my shed, the commander's face hardened. That makes this federal interference. They're done. The federal team rolled silently toward the clubhouse. No sirens, no spotlights. Just surgical precision. Inside, HOA President Gloria Winters was pacing with a glass of wine, ranting to her board. He's dangerous. military trained. We cannot let him expose us. Tomorrow morning, we file for emergency seizure of his property. Boom. Not an explosion, a battering ram. The front doors folded inward like paper. Gloria screamed. Todd hit the floor. Board members froze with wide eyes as a dozen tactical lights blinded them. Federal agents, do not move, Gloria shouted. This is harassment. I run this community. She was cut off as two agents pinned her in seconds. Todd tried to crawl under the table. A boot landed in front of his face. Nice try, an agent muttered. Todd tried to crawl under the table. A boot landed in front of his face. Nice try, an agent muttered. By sunrise, the whole neighborhood was awake. Federal vans lined the streets. Agents carried boxes stuffed with files, laptops, and hard drives taken from the HOA office. Neighbors whispered in clusters. What happened? Is the HOA under arrest? Did someone turn them in? Then a reporter approached me. Sir, we've been told you filed the federal complaint. Is that true? I didn't answer, but Henry stepped forward, leaning on his cane. It's true, he said proudly. My neighbor here exposed what these people were doing to all of us. More neighbors gathered. Someone clapped, then another. Then the whole street applauded. For the first time since I moved here, I finally felt like I belonged. At noon, the federal commander met me at my driveway. Mr. Reid, I thought you should see this. He handed me a folder. Inside was a printed email chain between Gloria and a private developer. They weren't trying to punish me. They weren't trying to enforce rules. They were trying to clear me out because the developer wanted my land, specifically my shed area, which sat on a long-forgotten fiber optic route. The HOA thought they could illegally seize and sell. They wanted my land. But instead, they triggered a federal response. The commander shook his head. Your shed wasn't the threat. They were. Good work. 1 week later, Gloria arrested. Todd charged with data theft. The entire HOA board disbanded by court order. The neighborhood voted unanimously to replace the HOA with a simple maintenance committee, and they asked me to lead it. One evening as I sat in my backyard, a familiar voice called over the fence. It was Henry. You know, he said, you handled that better than anyone else could have. You think you'll ever tell the neighbors who you really worked for? I smiled. No, I replied. Some secrets stay in the shed. Just then, a federal drone passed overhead, silent, fast, scanning the area and vanished into the clouds. Henry chuckled. Good to know someone's still watching. I nodded. Not the HOA, not the developers, but the right people, my people. And as long as that shed stands, this neighborhood will never be the same.